Okay, that's great. I see that we have 33 total in participants, including myself. So I like to make a start and welcome to our second Los Altos Hill Club social events of this year, 2021. I'm Michelle Wu, president of Los Altos Hill Club. Let me repeat our club mission every so often, and I felt like we should remind ourselves why we are here and what is the purpose. The Los Altos Hills Club is open to women who live in Los Altos Hills who would enjoy increasing our social contact and developing friendship within our community. The club was founded in 1958, 2 years after town was incorporated to provide opportunities for residents to meet and to become part of the thriving new community. The club was founded to promote social contacts and develop friendships. It is non-religious and non-political. So regardless of your political stand, we can leave that outside of this club. This month is the COVID-19 pandemic anniversary. As we many of already shared about your vaccine. And last year, Los Altos Hills Los Altos Hills City Council, which I was the mayor, proclaimed the local emergency consistency with county and state orders in March 2020. And it was quite a bit of a chaos, I remember. We didn't know what happened. We're just like shut down everything. And with the COVID-19 vaccine become rapidly available, provided free of charge by the federal government, and I hope all of you, many of you who have high chance of exposure to COVID-19 and people who are 65 and older, which many of our members probably are, already got your vaccine shot. And I just heard everybody talk about your reaction, everything, which is good and bad. The good thing is that you get the shot. The bad thing is you might have to deal with unknown consequences or side effect, which I'm not 65 yet. So I'm kind of waiting for see what you guys got before I'm eligible to get the shot. So Santa Clara County is now moving to a red tier from the purple tier. Purple tier was the most restricted, everything has to close, and red tier now you have the indoor dining, open gym, open, you can shop inside. It's a lot more flexible now, more activities going on, but still you have to be cautious to wear a mask and keep social distance. Well, so I have talked about all the things you probably already know, and let's shake off some winter blues, escape from the pandemic, and spring into the bounty of colorful bloom of for the next hour. And today we are showcasing the beautiful botanic garden and the historical house of Filoli. I'm gonna leave all of the details to our program manager, Cameron Bilger, and our guest speaker, Susan. So, Cameron, would you like to introduce, say something about our events?
Of course. Thank you, Michelle. It's my privilege to introduce our speaker today, Susan O'Sullivan. Susan has been with Filoli for 9 years and is currently the Chief External Relations Officer and oversees all the public relations, communications, marketing, and membership at Filoli. Very busy woman. So we really appreciate her taking the time to speak with us today. Susan's favorite part of working at Filoli is hearing stories from members and visitors on why they feel connected to this very special place. Susan lives in Redwood City with her husband and cats and can't wait till the pandemic is over, so Filoli can fully reopen and she can hear more stories. So thank you, Susan, for sharing your knowledge and pictures. There's nothing like beautiful flowers to brighten up our days. Please save any questions you have till the end, and we'll have plenty of time to answer all of them. So thank you, Susan. I'll mute myself now.
Thank you so much, Cameron and Michelle, and thank you all for inviting me and Filoli to come and spend a little bit of time with you this afternoon. I've got lots of beautiful images and pictures to share with you, and as Cameron mentioned, we have time at the end to take some questions too. So I think you can, I don't know how we'll do questions together, if we'll put them in chat or if you'll be able to ask them, but I may answer them during the presentation, so let's just wait until the end. We'll be sure to leave enough time. I'm going to share my screen now so that you can see my presentation. So let me get that started. How does that look? Can you all hear me and see that okay? I see nods of heads. Great, thank you. All right, wonderful. Well, I think that there's probably some folks in our audience today. I think I recognize a few names here of people who are very familiar with Filoli, some of our members, some of our volunteers, but I do hope that I'm going to share some information with you all that might be new and interesting to you as well. So the Filoli, the history on the peninsula, of course, the land where Filoli is built now was first occupied and was a home for the Ohlone. And they were one of the indigenous tribes that lived in the area, where there were more than 50 distinct groups of Ohlone in the area. And it's important that we acknowledge that they were the first people that lived there. After that, of course, there were the Spanish settlers who arrived in 1769, and by 1850, the Spanish occupation and the mission system had decimated the vast majority of the indigenous population. After that, the land was parceled out into a 12,545 acre land grant, and it was officially mapped in 1856 after the United States annexed California. Of course, a huge impact on the area and on the area where Filoli is now was the gold rush, which transformed our Bay Area from a sleepy frontier to a booming seaport. And William Bourn, who was who built Filoli, his father emigrated to California in 1850. And he invested in shipping and agriculture and utilities, and created great wealth through a lot of his ingenious work at the time. His son, William, was 22 years old when he began managing the Empire Gold Mine. His father had passed away a few years earlier. The Empire Gold Mine, located in Grass Valley, was owned by the Bourn family. It was the most productive gold mine in California. So as I mentioned, the Bourns were the first family at Filoli. They built Filoli in 1915 to 1917. And you can see this from this aerial photo here. Filoli is located right next to the Crystal Springs Reservoir, which was part of the Spring Valley Water Company. So Mr. Bourn knew about this spot, this beautiful spot on the peninsula, because of his involvement with the Spring Valley Water Company. They had invested heavily in utility companies. He purchased a controlling interest in the water company after the 1906 earthquake. He ended up selling the Spring Valley Water Company to the city of San Francisco. And so they had scouted out this gorgeous spot on the peninsula for their country home. And the Bourns were in their 50s when they built Filoli. It was their retirement home, you could say. And Mr. Bourn is quoted as saying, "My idea is to devote the afterglow of my life in personal supervision of Filoli's development. There I hope to grow young." The name Filoli, as many of you probably know, is a kind of a made-up word. It's not. Some folks think it's a Latin name or it's an Italian name, but it comes from Mr. Bourne's personal credo, which was to fight for a just cause, love your fellow man, live a good life. So fight, love, live is where the name Filoli comes from. And we think it's still a really good motto to live by these days as well. So Filoli is located about 30 miles south of San Francisco and surrounded by 23,000 acres of protected watershed. And it represents a desire during that time to create a magnificent and enduring country estate. This was something that many wealthy San Franciscans were doing during that period, that decade. They were building these country estates outside of the city. Interestingly, many of these rich San Franciscan families were motivated to build a house or an estate outside of the city because of the dangers of living in the city that they'd experienced during the 1906 earthquake. Ironically, of course, Filoli is built pretty much on the San Andreas Fault. There wasn't a real good understanding of earthquakes and fault lines at the time when they built Filoli. But luckily, Mr. Bourn was a great engineer, and the estate house is secured with steel. And so it was very well built, and it was able to endure the San Andreas earthquake with no damage, really. But the Bourns did experience their very first earthquake right in the first month after they moved in. I'm sure that was a bit unsettling for them. The Bourne family also owned Muckross Estate, which is in Killarney in Ireland. They had purchased it as a wedding gift for their daughter. And they loved traveling to Ireland and visiting Muckross. And part of the reason why they chose this beautiful spot for Filoli is that it reminded them a lot of that spot in Killarney in Ireland, being on a lake and having the beautiful green hills surrounding it. So it was quite an inspiration. In fact, if you're a visitor to Filoli, you can see the murals in the ballroom that represent Muckross. A really fun little historical point during the Bourne's residence while they lived at Filoli. It was during the time of Prohibition and the celebrating the repeal of Prohibition, the 18th Amendment. So they had what they called a drunks dinner in 1933, which was their last grand party at Filoli. Actually, at this point, Mr. and Mrs. Bourne were both in declining health, and they stayed upstairs and just listened to the festivities that were going on downstairs. But there were 20 guests who celebrated at a table that was elaborately decorated. You can see the invitation here. And William's sister Ida was the host of the party. So we've staged the dining room for the drunks dinner a few times since then. We love to tell the stories of the staff, besides just the stories of the families that lived in Filoli, but also the many, many people that worked there. There were 30 to 40 staff members that cared for the house and the garden and the estate during all the times that it was a residence. And there's a wing of the house that was dedicated to staff housing and dormitories, and there was also some housing on the property as well. And the second family that lived at Filoli, after the Bournes passed away, the Roth family purchased Filoli, and it was in the Roths were known for their entertainment. They were the family that owned the Matson Navigation Company, so we still see Matson shipping lines all over the world. And so they wanted to purchase a house that had a ballroom. That was one of their criteria for why they purchased Filoli. They had young twin daughters, and they were anticipating having many parties and having debutante ball for their daughter. So that was the great appeal for them. And so they did. Mrs. Roth created elaborate parties and huge entertaining decor with Tony Duquette, who's legendary designer who did a lot of stage design as well. And Mrs. Roth, Lurleen Roth, was a great lover of the gardens and horticulture. She was a flower arranger, and so always the gardens were part of the parties that they threw. You can see this fun party from 1960. And a huge influence on the garden was May Arbogast, who was a professional landscape architecture at UC Berkeley. She was on the Filoli Center founding committee and on the Saratoga Horticulture Foundation board. And she persuaded Mrs. Roth to donate Filoli to the National Trust, imagining it as a Wisley of the West. So when Mrs. Roth was living in Filoli alone after her children had grown and moved out, she didn't want to stay in the house any longer, and so she was trying to figure out what to do. And as I said earlier, May Arbogast and others helped convince her that it would be wonderful to donate Filoli to the National Trust for Historic Preservation, so that it could be shared with the public and not just be a private home any longer, especially the gardens. That was really important to Mrs. Roth, that they were able to be shared with the public and people will be able to enjoy it. She's quoted to say it was too beautiful to be private. The National Trust is a nonprofit. It's not a government entity. And its work is to save America's historic places. So I'll give you a little bit more info about the house and the gardens. The historic house is over 54,000 square feet. It's 56 rooms, 17 fireplaces, 15 bathrooms. As we say, 15 bathrooms where something can go wrong. So preservation is a big part of what we do at Filoli. 14 staff bedrooms and 10 main bedrooms. And currently the first floor of the house is open to the public. It's a Georgian revival style estate designed by architect Willis Polk. Willis Polk worked with the Bourns on some of their other houses as well. He helped to design the house that their main residence, which was on Webster Street in San Francisco, and then also the cottage at the Empire Gold Mine. The house was constructed between 1915 and 1917, and the cost at the time was a whopping $425,000. Which would be $8.5 million today. And that doesn't include the gardens and the auxiliary buildings. As I mentioned before, the house was designed with the idea of entertaining. So there's a beautiful ballroom, there's a grand reception room, there's a formal dining room. And so both the Roths and the Bourns loved to entertain and host parties and host performances in the ballroom. Mr. and Mrs. Bourn were founding members of the San Francisco Opera and the San Francisco Symphony, and so they often had members from both of those companies come and entertain their guests in the ballroom in small, intimate groups. But it was also a family home, and so it was a family home where they gathered with their grandchildren, where there were dogs, where there were horses in the outfields, and so there was intimate spaces inside the house as well, where you can picture the family playing cards, watching television. For the Bourns, their personal study was later used as a family room by the Roths, which is what you see in this picture here, which is a cozy room, an alternative to the grand reception room. And this is where they would watch television, have a drink before dinner, catch up with each other about the news of the day. And a whole wing of the house, of course, was dedicated to the staff living and to the staff work. This is a picture of the kitchen. And we just recently had, a few years ago, had the floor restored, which is a beautiful, it's back to like its 1930s look, linoleum. So this is the south wing of the house. In the kitchen, you can just imagine how busy it was here all the time. They had to prepare up to 9 meals a day for the staff and for the families and for guests. There's beautiful 17-foot high ceilings that would help keep the kitchen cool, even though there was all the cooking going on. And then just beyond that door there is the butler's pantry, which has a walk-in safe for storing silver, an electric call board, very much like Downton Abbey, where one of the family members could be in any of the rooms and ring a bell and call someone to come and bring them something. And of course, a dumbwaiter, which was necessary because there's a basement, a first floor, a mezzanine level, a second floor, and an attic. So to move things between all the floors, the dumbwaiter was busy all the time. You can imagine what kind of work it was to try to furnish a 54-room mansion. Interestingly, when the Roth family donated Filoli to the National Trust, the house was empty. Most of the contents were sold at auction, or they moved with Mrs. Roth to her next residence. So what you see now is a recollection of a lot of the furnishings that had been in the house before it was donated to the National Trust. Both families have, over the years, donated many items back to Filoli, and also other things have come back, have found their way home to us as well, as different collectors found out the provenance of some items, some art, some furnishings, and they wanted to get it back to Filoli, to its original home. But it's an ongoing effort with donors to try to have Filoli appear as it originally did. And luckily, we have a lot of beautiful historic photos that we can work from to try to recreate how it looked. The house is a collection. The collection in the house is mainly 17th and 18th century English and Irish furniture. There's also a beautiful collection of Chinese antiques, garden objects, and then there are some specialty collections that we really pride ourselves on, including beautiful collection of porcelains, a really impressive collection of botanical art that's always growing, a print collection, and California artists that we have showcased in the house as well. I'll give you a little bit of info about the garden, which I have to say, I'm in front of a picture of the daffodil field right now, but the garden is just about to take off for spring. The tulips are starting, and we're just about to enter our crazy spring season. We plant over 75,000 spring bulbs every year, and those bulbs we replant every year. So, and sometimes in our home gardens, we plant tulips and we let the tulips come back year after year. At Filoli, because we often change the colors, and also because they aren't 100% guaranteed to rebloom, we compost the tulip bulbs and we replant them every year so that we can change the display. There are over 250 fruit trees in the grounds at Filoli, 210 Irish yews, which you can see some in this picture here, that all originally came from cuttings from the Bourn-Roth Estate in Ireland. There's 96 original garden objects and 16 acres of formal gardens, including 5 beautiful wrought iron gates. The garden was begun after the house was finished, of course, in 1920 and finished in 1929. It's a formal English Renaissance style garden designed by Bruce Porter with assistance from Isabella Warren. Bruce Porter was mainly responsible for the layout of the garden, and Isabella Warren chose the colors and the plantings. And here you can see a picture of Bella Warren with one of the gardeners, Louis Marcioni. And she worked with Bruce Porter during the original design, and she actually worked with both families on the garden design through the years as it evolved. Their head gardener, Louis Marcioni, lived and worked at Filoli from 1915 until his death in 1965. In fact, there were a number of Italian gardeners that lived and worked at Filoli, and I think I heard, was it from Duffy, that had a family member connection there. In 1929, there were 14 full-time gardeners, which is the same number of gardeners as we have today. It still takes the same number of people to maintain that 16 acres of formal gardens. The garden design is Georgian style terraced around the house, and they take in the sweeping views of the Santa Cruz Mountains. It's a simple design in contrast to the formal English garden to the south, and features lush. This is our sunken garden, which is kind of the centerpiece of the gardens. You can see there lush garden beds, lined avenues, and centerpieces. And the design is really to give you the idea of different rooms that you walk through in the garden, so it doesn't seem quite as vast. So you can feel the edges of each room, of each garden room, as you're in them. We do seasonal plantings, as I mentioned, that change every year. Here you can see this swath of beautiful red tulips, which is something that we're repeating again this year. And the seasonal plantings are designed to make sure that there's something to see every day of the year, pretty much. So while spring has kind of been what we've been known for, there's an incredible display in the summertime. And we give thought, that horticulture team gives thought to what does the garden look like even in September and October, so that there's always something of interest as the plants change. The horticulturists do draw on historic photos and oral histories to inspire the seasonal plantings. We are a historic garden, so unlike some other botanic gardens, we do try to stay true to the historic roots and lines of the garden. And the spring display that you can see here is daffodils, tulips, hyacinths, cherry blossoms, wisteria. This is the picture of the walled garden, and here you can see one of the cherry trees that isn't quite in bloom yet. It's roughly an acre in size. It's enclosed with 10-foot high brick walls to keep out our friends the deer, which I'm sure all of you have to battle sometimes in your own gardens. And design involves clipped hedges. There's many small ornamental rooms, blossoming crabapple, and where you can't see what's behind us in this picture are also some roses. And then outside of the very formal gardens is what we call the cutting garden or the working garden, or the panel garden. And this is a large area to the south of the gardens where you can find a fruit orchard, vegetables growing, and cut flowers growing. For both families, it was really important that they brought the garden into the house. Both of the ladies of the house were flower arrangers and they loved flowers. And so there's, always fresh flowers in the house. That's definitely a tradition that we want to continue on today. And winding past through the daffodil meadow, which is in the picture behind me here, in the family orchard where, during springtime, there's plum and apricot and cherry trees blossoming, and then the fruits of those come later. And this all leads up to the high place, which is the highest point of the gardens. And it used to be, before the tree lines all grew up, you could even see the Crystal Springs Reservoir from there. And apparently that was Mr. Bourne's favorite spot to sit in the garden. Filoli is home to a number of significant plant collections. Mrs. Roth was an avid lover of camellias, and so we have an extensive camellia collection, which have been blooming since about January. They're one of our early bloomers. We have a huge collection of magnolias, and the magnolia trees are just passing their peak right now. Daffodils, which was a huge trend when Filoli's gardens were first built. Many English gardens were, it was very trendy to plant daffodils. And so the daffodils naturalize, of course. And so many of the daffodils that we have in the gardens now were planted over 100 years ago. We have over 50 wisteria planted around the property, many of them right around the historic house, and they're about to start blooming. Hundreds of roses. And so the roses, of course, are in peak form, usually in the summertime. We even have a significant collection of ivy, which we have to keep very controlled in the garden, as we all know. So the estate, the surrounding properties are 656 acres. We have 8 miles of nature trails. There's 3 wells on the property. Mr. Bourne, as owner of the Crystal Springs Water Company, was very aware of water and did his part to make sure that they could collect as much water as possible on the property and reuse it. This field that's in this picture here is a working field that still produces hay today and is farmed and mown. And there are 5 distinct plant communities within the nature preserve. We have the oak madrone forest, redwood stands, chaparral, riparian areas, and the light and the temperature changes as you pass through these different areas on the estate trail take you through the different plant communities. The estate trail is a 1-mile loop that's open to the public. It comes with just as part of your admission. You can go out and hike on the estate trail on your own. The other trails that we have available on the property are for school groups or for organized hikes, both of which, unfortunately, we're not having right now, but hopefully we'll be able to bring them back soon. So as I said, there's a 1-mile self-guided trail that you can go on that takes you out to we have a nature center on the property, which we've just been able to reopen recently. And you'll see all the wonderful residents of the Bay Area, deer, so many turkeys. We have so many turkeys on the property, banana slugs, so many birds. You'll see great blue herons, egrets, lots of different hawks and quail. And of course, mountain lions live on the property as well. We don't get to see them really, but we know they're there. And natural springs and creeks as part of the preserve as well. And here are the different ecosystems that I'd mentioned earlier, and a beautiful shot of the fields leading up into the Santa Cruz Mountains. There you can see some of the redwoods. So Filoli today, as we're open to the public, and as was Mrs. Roth's intention to share Filoli with the public, our intention is to create a cultural center that we can share with the Bay Area community. A few years ago, in 2018, we wrote a new strategic plan, a 5-year plan that we started implementing in 2019. And I'll just share a few details of that with you. One of them was that we rewrote our mission so that it was more clear and reflective of our vision, which is to connect our rich history with a vibrant future through beauty, nature, and shared stories. And our vision statement, which is we envision a time when all people honor nature, value unique experiences, and appreciate beauty in everyday life. It's something we can all get behind. So part of our strategic plan is there's 3 cross-cutting principles that we try to embrace in all levels of the organization and all the work we do, including diversity and inclusivity, which I'll talk about a little bit in a minute. Sustainability, which is more than just composting. Sustainability is making sure that we're financially sustainable for the future, and that all of the preservation practices that we do take sustainability into consideration. And organizational excellence, we want to make sure that Filoli is practicing the highest standards and benchmarks in its industries, and leading with new programs and partnerships. And there are 5 elements of our strategic plan. Everything's divided into people and culture, financial and fundraising strength, infrastructure investments, visibility, and engagement in education. I just want to share with you too. Filoli is a nonprofit, and so these are the ways that we are able to raise money to keep Filoli going. And it's predominantly, as you can see, through admissions. So it's important for Filoli to remain open to the public, and also membership is a very important component as well that keeps us going. You can see our attendance numbers here, which we're on the rise for a number of years in a row. And then of course we had 2020 and that changed things for all of us. But we felt really fortunate that we were able to be open for most of 2020. We were closed for 2 months from mid-March to mid-May. And then we were able to open the outdoors. And this is just interesting information about the makeup of our Filoli guests. You can see the ethnic makeup. Our visitors are 50% of our visitors are between the ages of 18 and 44 years old, and 25% of our visitors have children under 18 living at home, and 50% of our visitors come from outside of 20 outside of the Bay Area, which these numbers are for 2019, so I think it was probably a little different last year. There we go. I wanted to talk with you just briefly about the work that Filoli's been doing on the fronts of diversity, accessibility, inclusion, and equity. So DEAI at Filoli, we were lucky to be chosen by the American Alliance of Museums to participate in their Facing Change initiative. So the American Alliance of Museums chose 50 museums and organizations to participate in a pilot program to try to work on diversity of mainly their museum boards. As you can probably guess, most of the boards of museums in the United States are predominantly white. And the American Alliance of Museums wanted to do work on trying to make sure that the boards of museums reflected what the communities they serve look like. And so that was the start of it. And Filoli was able to participate in the pilot program. It's an ongoing program. We're about halfway through our participation in it. But one of the first things that we did was adopt a diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion statement that our board just endorsed last month, actually. So this is ongoing work that we're doing now. Filoli is dedicated to nurturing and growing diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion in all that we do. Our core mission is to connect our rich history with a vibrant future through beauty, nature, and shared stories. And we strive to create a sanctuary and build connections for all people. We're open to all, and we work tirelessly and collaboratively to create a place that welcomes and respects everyone. We strive to live our credo authentically, to fight for a just cause, love your fellow man, and live a good life. So this is ongoing work that Filoli is doing now. part of that is reflected in the stories that we tell. This is a beautiful photo from our archives of the reception room and the butler placing a flower arrangement in the middle of the room. And this is an interpretive plan that's evolving and changed for us too. You know, we've spent many, many years telling the stories of, as I've told you a little bit of too, of the Roths and the Bourns. We haven't told much about the stories of the time period before the Roths and the Bourns lived there. And we told very little of the stories of the Ohlone that lived there. And so we're trying to change the way we tell stories and have it be more inclusive. And this graph is a little hard to see, but we're trying to tell more of the themes that run through the many years of history of the land that Filoli occupies now, including the stories of water, the stories of biodiversity in the animals, the stories of arts and culture, and to make sure that it's a dynamic visitor-centered approach to storytelling and programming. So that there are many more ways that we can tell the stories of Filoli that our visitors can connect to. And here's a photo of some of our visitors in the orchard during orchard days. And so we want to make sure that we give our visitors lots of different ways to experience Filoli, including visiting the orchard. There are what we consider to be 5 seasons at Filoli, not just 4, but at Filoli we get to have 5. And I'm going to take you through our different offerings during the seasons. So winter, which we just got through our winter season. This year, for the first time, we put on display over 100 of the bonsai that we have in our collection. And they were on display in the garden house, which you can see in front of us here, and on the dining room terrace. We also started to talk about stories of resilience. And so we're trying to tell some of the stories that have been untold for many years. The beautiful photo I showed you of the butler in the reception room, he was Japanese, and during his time working at Filoli, he and his family had to go to the internment camps. And it's a story that we haven't told before. Also, the camellias, of course, are part of our winter story since they start blooming early. Right now we're in spring, and we have the daffodils and the tulips and the cherry blossoms, and the flowers are the main story that we have to tell during the springtime. It's our peak season at Filoli, and I do want to say that if you're planning on visiting, that you need to book your tickets in advance because the weekends are selling out. Because of our COVID response, we have a reduced admission for every day, so we don't have too many visitors every day. So the weekends are selling out during our peak spring. In the summertime, we do something really fun. We're open on Thursday nights until 8 p.m. And it's a beautiful time to be in the garden. The beautiful magic light that you see then, the roses are all blooming during the summertime. We have a few bars where you can get a glass of wine and stroll. The begonias put on a big show during the summertime as well. So I encourage you to come visit us during the summertime. It's gorgeous. And fall, of course, is a beautiful season especially where we all live here, where it's still warm and beautiful outside. So we have a new thing that we just started last year, which is orchard days. You saw the picture of the folks in our orchards. The orchard, the gentleman's orchard, it runs along the front of the property. You can see it from the parking lot. And it's normally not open to the public, but in October, on the weekends, we open the orchards to the public, and there's seating, and there's, last year we had some artists that had some artist booths. So you can do a little shopping while you're out there too. And you can stroll through the extensive orchard collection and learn a little bit about the trees that we have out there. And of course, beautiful fall colors from the oaks, from the Japanese maple, the ginkgo in the gardens, the ivy. It's a beautiful thing to see. And then, of course, there's holidays, which is a huge 6-week-long event. We start before Thanksgiving. So the week before Thanksgiving, we light the gardens with hundreds, thousands and thousands of lights. So the gardens are extensively lit for a beautiful outdoor stroll. We decorate the house with trees in every room and garlands. And we celebrate special days like winter solstice. This last year, of course, because of COVID, We decorated the house, and then we couldn't have it open, but you could look in the windows and see the beautiful displays inside. But the gardens were a big hit this year. We were open every night from mid-November until January 3rd, and we welcomed over 50,000 visitors during the holidays. Because it was a beautiful outdoor, safe experience that you could do and you could bring your kids to. And we found it to be really a welcoming experience for our visitors to be able to have a little holiday, festivities during such a difficult year. And so this is our the way we do holidays now, and we would welcome you all to come visit us. And we have Santa on the weekends. This last year we had socially distanced selfies with Santa, and who knows what things will look like next holiday season. But we will definitely have Santa one way or another, which is a really fun way for you to bring the kids out and get a chance to see Santa. We do art exhibitions in the gardens. This last year, we were lucky to work with Christine Mays, who created these beautiful sculptures from copper wire. And they're often thematic, and they're new and different every year. We've had glass art in the gardens in years past as well. And rooms in the house, we often reinterpret in different ways and change the stories that we're telling there too. Here's Christine Mays. She created these beautiful sculptures that we were able to share with our audience this last year. And exhibitions in the house, as I mentioned, we had the bonsai. So we had over 100 bonsai that were on display, and we had bonsai for sale. And in the house, we're just starting now with the house being able to be open again to tell stories of resilience. So we talk about the impact of the Chinese Exclusion Act on the staff and on the Japanese internment, and the rise of female entrepreneurs like Bella Warren in early 20th century San Francisco. And we talk about the absence of Black and Latinx staff and performers at Filoli. We don't see them in the census or in any of the stories that we have to tell, and that's important for us to ask why as well. And of course, our seasonal displays, which change every year. Here you can see some beautiful shots of the tulips and daffodils that we have in pots. And public programs. So some things that have been really successful, even though we've been going through the pandemic and COVID, is the summer nights that I mentioned, orchard days. We had an art festival last year that was an art walk that we'll plan to do again this year, where the artists' booths are very spaced out through the garden. So it's a nice stroll through the garden. Santa Saturdays. And this year, for the second year, we had a haiku poem competition, which was really fun. And we'll be celebrating Pride the first weekend of June at Filoli. We do have education programs. One really fun thing that we're doing now that works during COVID is our family field trips. So this is where you can bring your family and go on a hike with one of our staff members just in your pod. And it's a nice supplement, especially for families who are having to do all of their school remotely. So a chance for them to get outside and have an educational experience outdoors. We have on our website, we have some distance learning resources and a family activity guide. So families can access those things to make more of their trips to Filoli together. And we have a volunteer program. Our volunteer program purpose statement is: our volunteers amplify our mission by supporting the staff's critical efforts to preserve, welcome, and inspire. Our volunteer program is on hold at the moment until we move into a better tier so to protect their health and safety. But we look forward to welcoming the volunteers on site back again soon, hopefully. And Filoli is available for rental events. It's a really one-of-a-kind venue to create lasting memories. We do weddings, corporate events. Of course, all these things are in the wings right now. Not a lot of it happening, although we have been doing micro weddings, which has been really nice. So giving brides and grooms a chance to have their ceremony in a beautiful place with just about 6 people, but still for folks who don't want to wait. And we do have opportunities to do like a private holiday bar, to have private teas. So even during COVID, we can serve small groups, family groups, and different experiences. Our daily admission, we're open every day. We're open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. year round. General admission is always free for Filoli members. So we encourage you to become a member if you want to visit more often than once. And you do, because the seasons change every year or change every season. We offer discounts for seniors, for students, for teachers, for military, for children. During the summertime, we participate in a program called the Blue Star Museum program. So we offer free admission to active duty military and their families between Memorial Day and Labor Day. And we participate in a few other programs as well to offer free or reduced admission to families that need it. In 2019, we welcomed over 230,000 visitors. And we are so appreciative of the support that we get from the community. Membership is a great way to support Filoli. Membership levels start at $79. The Senior Plus level allows you to bring a guest with you every time, or Individual Plus for those under 65. Household level includes children or grandchildren, 24 and under. We realize that there are sometimes children and grandchildren living at home who are over 18, and we want to make sure they're included in the family as well. And the Household Plus level is the same as that. Plus, you get to bring a guest with you every time you visit. And we have over 11,000 members, and we're so grateful for their support. Our members get all kinds of extra little perks too. Like right now, members get to visit early on the weekends. We open at 9 a.m. on Saturdays and Sundays for members so that they can get in and see the beautiful spring gardens before everybody else. We have this beautiful clock tower shop where we have plants for sale. Some of these plants we propagate in our historic greenhouses, and all kinds of other items, including Filoli products. And we have Filoli grown honey, and we have other herbs and vinegars and things like that that are produced from Filoli products. Oh, Filoli jams and apple butters that come from the Filoli orchards, and lots of other fun things for sale too. There's the Quail's Nest Cafe, which is a nice place to, for a respite, to sit down and have a sandwich, have a salad, sit outside in the gardens. And that's located in our visitor center. And I just want to share with you a little bit about some of the investment that we're doing in preservation. This is the drawing room. This is a historic photo of the drawing room as it looked when the Bourns and Roths lived at Filoli. And this is what it looked like most recently in 2015 as we were open to the public, which looks very different. You can see from the art in the walls, it's very different. It was our goal to restore this room back to the way it looked originally. And luckily we were able to do that. We had a donor who collected all of these mezzotints for us, recollected them for us and donated them to Filoli, had them framed. And we were also able to change the wall color to this beautiful butter yellow, which is what it was originally, that goes so much better with the floors and the trim. We're also planning a huge renovation project in the historic veggie garden, and curating our collections, which are our museum objects, the library, and plants. These are some of the objects that we've recently been able to recollect that are in our collection now, including some new additions like this beautiful vintage billiards table that we have in the Gentleman's Lounge, and card table. The Gentleman's Lounge is a place where the gentlemen of the family would play games of chance. Mr. Bourn was a big gambler. And also this 1960s Zenith console television, which we have in the family room right now. And of course, many people recognize Filoli because of the many things that were filmed there, including Heaven Can Wait, the Joy Luck Club, the game. If you've seen the game, I watched it again recently, is all at Filoli. It's pretty amazing to watch. George of the Jungle, The Wedding Planner, which is what this photo is from here. It's kind of hard to see, but there's J-Lo in there. And then also Rent was filmed at Filoli, and the one, of course, that we're most known for, Dynasty. So Filoli was the location of the pilot, was filmed at Filoli. And then they actually built on the sound stage replica rooms that looked just like Filoli, where they filmed the rest of the Dynasty series. So that's the end of my formal presentation, but I'm here to take any questions or hear anything else that you all would like to share with me.
Well, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My question is, if I decide to go and get a little lunch and then just do some shopping, and I'm not going to tour the gardens or the house, is there a different admission rate?
Unfortunately, we don't have a way of doing a different admission rate because the shop is right in the middle of the gardens. We don't have any way of letting you just go to the shop and keeping you from seeing the rest of the gardens or the rest of the property. So we just charge regular admission. The shop and the cafe we consider to be amenities for our visitors, so they're not available just to visit outside of that. But I'd recommend becoming a member, and then you can visit as many times as you want.
Okay, thank you.
So then there's a chat from Ann Dewey. Let me see. There's a question here. Can you read the chat and read out the chat question and answer that as well?
I do. It's a great question. So Anne's asking, is there extra produce or fruit from the gardens? And if so, where does it go? And that's an excellent question. We've harvest over 2 tons of fruit from the gardens every year, from the orchards. And we create our own apple butters and jams that we have for sale in the shop. But we also donate it to Second Harvest Food Bank. So most of the fruit actually ends up being donated. And we have they have volunteers, Second Harvest, that they send out to do the fruit collecting as well. So that's where the bulk of it goes, which is wonderful because it's heirloom fruit that's not been treated, organic. So it's great that we were able to share it. Thank you, Anne. That's a great question. Anyone else?
There's another question from Lisa Schmidt. Can you read it?
Oh, yeah, sure. Hi, Lisa. So have the gardens changed recently due to today's hotter and drier climate? This is another great question too. We all can recall a few years ago, we had a real serious drought. And I think it was 2015. I'm not sure if I've got the year right, but right about 5 years ago. And we had to make some drastic changes to the gardens. It's not a drought friendly garden, you know, an English garden like ours. But we have so many expanses of lawn that are such great drinkers of water. So we actually had to let some of the lawn spaces go. And then we also invested in better watering systems so that we're, you know, using timers so that we're checking soil moisture levels, so that we're conserving, also just making sure there's no leaks, making sure that, you know, we're watering carefully. We also utilize the water that we get from the wells first before we use city water. So that takes about 30%, takes us about 30% of the way through the year, just using our own water. But this is a big topic of discussion that our horticulturists are taking on now, of what are ways that we can, when plants go, because they have a life and they don't go on, they need to be replaced. What can we replace them with that would be better as far as water conservation goes? It's not a problem that's going away. So we know it's something that we need to continue to try to address.
Thank you,
And
Susan. I think you got 2 more coming up. Well, the other one is Mr. J. Great presentation. Do you want to read the question yourself and answer it?
yes, thank you. That's a great question. Are there any Zoom virtual field trips for elementary school students where teachers can sign up for them? Unfortunately, we don't have any Zoom virtual field trips, but we do have a lot on our YouTube channel, a lot of tours, short tours that you can take advantage of and see yourself, tours of the house, tours of the gardens during different times of year. And we're doing our best to try to reach out to teachers and figure out what might be something we can offer them. So that might be something that's coming in the next year or so. And then I have another question here from Indu asking, have we considered a family apple picking or fruit picking activity? You know, we talked about that a little bit this last year to try to figure out how we could do it safely. And we didn't end up doing it with COVID and all of that. But I think it's something that's up for consideration, especially now that we're opening the orchards during the months of October, to try to figure out a way that we could engage families in some kind of a fun activity like fruit picking.
Susan, I have a question. You planted thousands of 75,000 of tulips. Well, I planted 100 tulips in my yard, and the next year I didn't get single one of them because gopher ate all of them. So how do
Yeah.
you you
Yeah,
have a gopher
gophers love
problem
them.
when you plant that many tulips? You're gonna attract the armies of the gopher.
I mean, I hate to tell you, Michelle, but of course, you know, we try to catch those little buggers. we have gopher traps, you know, strategically located throughout the gardens. It's an ongoing battle, of course, and it's an issue. I think we just try to beat them with planting more. So maybe if we plant 70,000 tulips, most of them will survive.
Okay. There's more for the chat. Can you read it and then answer it?
Are the camellias still blooming? Yes, they are. So they're in such different varieties and in different areas of the property that depending on exposure, it's kind of a rolling bloom. They do start in January, but the camellias that are blooming around the wedding place, which if you're familiar with the property, those are all starting now. So I think we've got maybe another month still of camellias.
Okay, that's great. Does anyone want to raise your hands and want to speak? And feel free to ask questions. If you don't want to type, just ask question. I see that all is muted. You have to unmute yourself if you have any questions.
I do see a question here about how we handle the deer problem. And we have a few different things we'd have to do. First of all, we have the 10-foot wall around the walled garden. So that works pretty well. We have to be very careful that we close the gates all the time because they have gotten in the garden before. And that's an issue. And then we also, we have a deer fence that goes in front of the house. So that helps to try and keep the deer away from the potted plants that we have in front. And what about the bunny rabbits that eat the lawn? It's true. We have to try to make peace with nature. We're doing our best, you know, they're adorable to see, but you know, we also want to make sure that we keep our plants safe too.
I just wanted to thank you for reminding us not only what a beautiful place Filoli is, but actually I'd like to applaud you for sharing how current you're trying to expand the footprint, not only, I mean, not physically, obviously, but spiritually, and as far as just making it pertinent to today with all of the people that live in and around the area. That's very exciting to me, and I just joined.
Thank you so much, Erica. Thank you. Thanks for recognizing that.
I think I did it years ago and I don't know why. I'm not a regular member, but I'm going to change that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We appreciate that you recognize that.
Anyone have a question? Go ahead, Duffy.
Duffy, okay. I'm Suzanne. This was fabulous. You did a wonderful job and you covered so many bases. And I love you went into the strategic plan. It's absolutely wonderful. And it's very stimulating to us in the Los Altos Hills Club that we should be doing a similar sort of thing from my perspective at any rate. May I also say that being a member is really wonderful when you get this magazine. I think how many times a year? 4 times a year or so?
We do it 5 times a year.
Times
Thanks, Duffy.
Yeah, because it also has the programs that are upcoming. For example, you're having a wonderful May 9th spring picnic that's listed. And I was just thumbing through this and I said, this is a valuable little tool to help schedule your life for those of us that have no life. but it helps us to be able to figure out what we're going to be doing in the future. So thank you again. It was wonderful. We enjoyed it thoroughly.
I
Thank
assume
you.
that Duffy, you are a member of
Yes,
Filoli?
I am a member. So if that's another trade-off, I mean, you can join and then get this wonderful magazine. So it's wonderful.
Thank you so much, Duffy.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Susan, I'm going to have a little bit off track question because you mentioned about your mission statement and you talk about the diversity. You mentioned that. Why is diversity so important?
Why is it important?
Yeah.
Yeah, just like a garden really thrives on diversity, it's important that you have, many different kinds of plants and animals and insects and all of that in order to keep it healthy and strong and beautiful. We feel the same way about Filoli's community, that it's important that we reflect the Bay Area community, really. We want to make sure the Bay Area is a very diverse community, and we want to make sure that our board and our staff and our visitors and our volunteers all reflect the Bay Area community as best as we can. We find that there's great strength to be found in a diverse audience and in diverse staff and in a diverse board. And diversity is so many things. It's ethnic background, and it's religious background, and it's the different abilities that people have. We want to make sure that we're accessible to people, that we're reflecting the different cultural ideas that people have. So we want Filoli really belong to everyone in the Bay Area community and feel like it's theirs and that they belong there.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Any more questions?
Yeah.
Meredith,
I have a quick question. I haven't heard anything mentioned about rhododendrons. Do you still have the walk out towards the back with the rhododendrons?
Yes, absolutely. The rhododendrons are not, I don't think they're not ready to bloom yet. I think they're coming in maybe another month. They're gorgeous. And actually, one interesting thing I learned about the rhododendrons is that we, just talking about untold stories and diversity, Filoli for many years partnered with Demoto Nursery, and that's where a lot of the dahlia collection at Filoli has come from, but also the rhododendrons came from the Demoto Nursery. And the Demoto family endured in the Bay Area for many generations. Unfortunately, they also had to go to the internment camps during the Japanese internment. But after they were released, they were able to restart their nursery program again. And the roadies just made me think of that when you reminded me of them.
Okay, I'm gonna close the question answer session and conclude the wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, Susan, for the wonderful virtual tour for the Filoli. We definitely felt very special that you've given us this virtual tour. We appreciate your wonderful presentation, and I hope we will actually make a plan to physically visit Filoli this summer or in the near future when it is safe to do so. And I myself been there a few times, and I just can't wait to be there again. It's just gorgeous. It's beautiful.
Yes.
And thank you, Cameron, that you have connected us with Filoli virtually. And hopefully that we'll have to need your help to connect us to the Filoli physically next time.
So as soon as we're all vaccinated, I think a summer field trip would be awesome. And we get to meet Susan in person. How great is that?
Yeah, maybe we could even have a lunch in their quail's nest. I don't know. I'm just excited to to see. Maybe you're looking forward for events there. So Duffy, you're the one who are actually driving all these Ultimate Club behind. And do you have something? Make a remark and comment.
Well, I just think this program was outstanding. And thank you all very, very much for the participation. We had over 30, I think at one point we had at least 36 people aboard, which was really great. And thank them very much for attending. And then just to remind everyone on the board, if I may, that our next board meeting is next Tuesday on the 16th at 10:30. And I will send around, or Michelle, do you want to send around the Zoom meeting this time, or shall I do it from our end?
I could do that.
Okay.
The board meeting is fine. Sure. I'll do
Okay,
that.
that's great. Thank you very much. This was really good.
And
And
I
what-
would say, go ahead.
I was just going to say that one last thing, and I hope that you all recognize this, that our membership is back to full membership of 70 women belonging to the Los Altos Hills Club. And we only lost 2 this year who moved away. So that Marcia Robertson has moved away and Maureen Walsh has moved away. So we're back. So please reach out and know that we would certainly be happy to accept any new members to the club. Certainly Pamela would appreciate that, would appreciate knowing. So let her know. Thanks again.
And I would say that the club membership is open to women resident of Los Altos Hills with the Los Altos Hills mailing address.
Yes.
And those members who have belonged to the club for at least 2 years may continue membership after moving to a new community. That's
Perfect.
what our rule right now. And visit our website for more information. Like Duffy said, we'll have a board meeting next week, the following week at 10:30. So please, for all the board members, remember that, mark on your calendar. We're going to discuss our future events. For all of the members, for general public, feel free to reach out to us if you have a wonderful idea about events and thoughts, comments, suggestions. I'm definitely ready to open my mind and listen to your wonderful ideas, always.
Great.
Thank you so much. And I think we will conclude our virtual Zoom meeting today, and hope to see you next time.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.